iba network adịrọ mma chatata. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you're joining us today in today's live lecture coming to you from Nkolo Mahadum Wisdom University. Today's date is Oye Market Day in the Igbo lunar calendar in the month of Onwa Uzo Alose. And today's date in the Roman Catholic calendar is January 5, 2026. And remember, at Nkolo Mahadum, we always advise you to use your naturally given common sense, which we call Akonuche in Igbo language. And because we are Igbo-centric, Biafran-centric, and African-centric, we always advise you to see things from how it concerns you, not how it concerns other cultures. And in addition, we present and package things from Igbo man, from the Biafran and African perspectives. That's why we always encourage you to join us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Now we're on live on YouTube, we are live on Facebook, and we're live on TikTok. So join this lecture. And also like, comment, and share. The title of today's lecture is USA Donald Trump Kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro on Friday night, 1/2/26. What you have to know. The USA President Donald Trump kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro, an elected president of Venezuela. What you have to know. And because of the limitations we have, because we want to just give you what you have to know, there's a lot going on. And we have to start by giving you a brief history of Venezuela. Venezuela was colonized by Spain starting from 1502. And while they were trying to colonize them, the indigenous people were resisting them. Amid resistance from the indigenous people led by native caciques. The people that own the land of Venezuela are the caciques. So while Spain was trying to conquer them, was trying to colonize them, the indigenous people were also resisting. Just like the Igbo people, the Hausa people, and other indigenous people across Africa is continuously resisting foreign colonialism up to today. But initially, Venezuela was part of Colombia, Panama, and Ecuador, forming what they call Grand Colombia until 1830, when they became independent. So Venezuela became independent as a country in 1830. And what you have to ask yourself is, a country that became independent in 1830 and in 2025, this elected president is being kidnapped in the manner that he was kidnapped. Just think about that. Because here we encourage you to use your especially given common sense to evaluate things. That a country that became independent in 1830, long ago, this president is being kidnapped today in the manner he was kidnapped. I remember during colonialism, when the Europeans started to leave their land, when the Western Europeans, the main colonizers, and the main colonizers are Spain, Portugal, Britain, Germany, France, Belgium, Italy. These are the main colonizers that left Western Europe to other people's land. And so, during that period of colonialism, when America, when it had been formed, when the Europeans left Europe to America and conquered America and took over the land of the indigenous people of America, called the American Indians, and also had several wars with Mexico, and also took their land. Also, when America stabilized, they have what they call the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine was articulated in Monroe's. Monroe was one of the presidents of America in 1823 address to Congress. And that Monroe Doctrine, the doctrine of Monroe, it was intended to ward off European colonizers and other interference in independent nations of Western Hemisphere. That is what it is intended for. To ward off, to drive away Europeans interfering in what they call Western Hemisphere. If you look at the map of that Western Hemisphere, you see the countries that are in that Western Hemisphere. Countries such as Venezuela, Peru, Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina, to mention a few. If you look at the map, you will see it's a very big land. That's South America. It's called this, what they call Western Hemisphere is what they call today South America. South America. So the Monroe Doctrine makes sure Europeans don't take part in exploiting Southern America. And what you have to ask yourself is, why should that area be called Southern America? Why you have indigenous people living there? Why should that place be called Southern America? That's what you have to ask yourself. It's because of imposition that America has imposed herself on that region, on that geographical area. If you look at it, it's a very vast land, very big land, just close to the size of African continent. That is what you see as South America. And the Monroe Doctrine is meant to drive away Europeans and any other country coming close there to compete with America in the exploitation of that vast land. That is what the Monroe Doctrine is. And so that Monroe Doctrine now gives America complete access to those lands, to be exploiting those lands, to be controlling the government, to be imposing governments there, to be changing the governments there in that continent. Not only there, and so many other places where they do regime changes to make sure that they put in a puppet that will be dancing to the tune of America. These are the things we want you to know. And that area called South America is a very, very vast land, very, very big land. And as Venezuela continues to, be run by their leaders, in 1976, they nationalized their assets. And once you are a country and you nationalizing means taking control of your assets, making sure you are the one controlling your natural resources. That is nationalization. And you know that colonizers does not like nationalization. Once you nationalize, you become their enemy. And so Venezuela nationalized her natural resources starting from 1976. But before then, they did pass a law. Before then, they passed a law that actually helped them to, you know, to nationalize their natural resources. And in August 1971, under the presidency of Rafael Caldera, a law was passed that nationalized the country's natural gas industry. Also, in 1971, the law of reversion was passed, which stated that all the assets, plants, and equipments belonging to concessionaries within or outside the concession areas will revert to the nation without compensation. Without compensation upon the expiration of the concession. What this means is all is built by foreigners, foreign companies, and governments, including America, that at the end of the concession that they sign, after the concession that they sign with the government, after the concession that the government signed with the companies or governments of another country that is doing business in Venezuela, that the whole asset will now revert to Venezuelan control. That is what happened. So they took over their national resources, the management of the natural resources to themselves. And America and her companies doesn't like that. They didn't like that. So the problem you see in Venezuela is the wealth of Venezuela. You have heard, and it is known, that Venezuela have the highest oil reserve in the world. They have the highest oil reserve in the world, plus other natural resources, rare minerals, which America is badly in need of. So the problem is the wealth in Venezuela. And America have been exploiting this Southern America for so many years, for centuries. It's not today. And recently, when Hugo Chavez, remember one of their leaders, Hugo Chavez was in power. Hugo Chavez was in power from 1999 to 2013 when he was killed. When Hugo Chavez was there, America was also against him because he was fighting for the people. He was fighting for the people. And I want to use this lecture to explain two things for you. When you have a leader that is they call a leftist, it means that leader is fighting for the people, is helping the people. When you have a leader, they say it's a rightist. It's a rightist. That leader is not fighting for the people. So Chavez was a leftist leader. Once you hear leftist, it means social. That government has a reasonable amount of social welfare, social programs that they have for their people, that the people will benefit from. Once you have a program that your people are benefiting from, the colonial masters do not like it. And Chavez was one of them. And he was also fighting to protect Venezuelan natural resources. And when he was in power, between 1999 and 2013, you can see that the West, America, and her companies and their medias were against him. They were against him. And it was Nicolas Maduro was the vice president to Hugo Chavez. He was vice president to Hugo Chavez. So when Chavez died, he took over the power. So That is why you see Nicolas Maduro following the footstep of Hugo Chavez. It's just like when the colonial masters killed Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso. Now another Ibrahim Traore emerged from the lessons, from the education, from the activities of Sankara, Thomas Sankara, coming to replicate what Sankara, trying to start where Sankara stopped, like in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traore is continuing from where Thomas Sankara stopped. The same way in Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro was continuing from where Hugo Chavez stopped, trying to control the natural resources, trying to have programs for the people. And the colonial masters, America is one of them, didn't like that. And that is why you see what is going on today in Venezuela. And we want to use this lecture to also explain to you that many countries in this world don't have sovereignty. When you hear about sovereignty, many countries don't have sovereignty. Even America don't have sovereignty. American sovereignty. Now, sovereignty can be defined as ability of a country to do what it wants to do without interference. Sovereignty is being defined today by Nicolas Maduro as ability of a country or individual to do what you want to do. If you are able to be doing what you want to do as a country, then you have sovereignty. If you cannot do whatever you want as a country, then you don't have sovereignty. Some sovereignty is limited. There's a lot of limited sovereignty. And the best way to explain it is that we have overt and covert sovereignty. Remember, covert is when it is hidden. Hidden sovereignty. Hidden sovereignty is that you think that you are sovereign, but in reality, you are not sovereign because if you are borrowing money, you are being controlled by those giving you loans. If you are depending on another country to buy arms, you don't have sovereignty. If you allow terrorists, like in the case of Nigeria, to come to your country, you don't have sovereignty. If you allow the richest 1% in your country to be the one controlling the government is doing, you don't have sovereignty. Those ones are called covert sovereignty because you think you have sovereignty, but you don't actually have it. You are being controlled by those giving you money, giving you arms, and by some decisions you are making. Like in the case of Nigeria, bringing in terrorists, you have covert sovereignty. When you lose control, like what we saw that happened in Venezuela, America coming and kidnapping an elected president of that country, what you have is overt loss of sovereignty. It is not clear to the world. They did it openly. The world saw what happened. Sometimes when you see demonstrations going on in some countries, just like the demonstrations going on in Iran, it's an overt sovereignty. Because now you are seeing those demonstrations, but you don't know that there's a hand. There's a hand that is causing, making those people to demonstrate against the government of Iran. It is public, but also hidden. That, yes, you see people demonstrating, but you don't know why they are demonstrating. The reason why they are demonstrating in Iran today is because there's a hand. Somebody is pushing that demonstration. And you are seeing people demonstrating. You are seeing people demonstrating. So when you see people demonstrating in that sense, it is an open loss of sovereignty. You have lost your sovereignty. So once you lose your sovereignty openly, everybody knows that you have lost it. But there are some sovereignty that you have lost. Many people will not know that you have lost your sovereignty. It will be covert. It will be hidden. Only very few countries have maintained their sovereignty. And such country can be China. For now, only China and Russia. China and Russia are the only countries that have maintained their sovereignty. Other countries in the world doesn't have sovereignty. That's what we want you to know. Because even though what is being done is hidden, if you are buying arms secretly from another country, if you have covered loss of sovereignty. If you are taking loans secretly, it's a covered loss of sovereignty. If you bring in terrorists into your country, you have lost your sovereignty. Okay? If you allow foreigners to come and be the one exploiting your raw materials, exploiting your natural resources, you have lost your sovereignty. So loss of sovereignty is everywhere. But what we have that transpired in Venezuela is overt, is open. It was publicly known. It was known that they lost their sovereignty because America has been interfering in their government, in their activities for so many centuries. Also, it shows that the United Nations don't have no power. The United Nations don't have no power. Because if the UN have power, Trump US have to go to UN first. He has to go to UN first. If UN have power, before Trump can go and invade another country and kidnap their leader, he must go through the UN. That tells us that the UN is just a paper tiger, doesn't have any influence in what is actually going on in the world, except talking. Finally, in this lecture, we want you to know that what you see going on around the world today is as a result of the animal kingdom created after the passage of the Papal Bull of the 15th century, of 1455, whereby Pope Nicolas V authorized the Europeans through Portugal to start going to countries, to those that are not following Jesus, doesn't know the Bible, to kill them, to take their land. That is what led to all this slavery, killing, founding of America, taking of lands, founding of Canada, Australia, the intervention in Africa, the 1884 division of African land to Europeans, the 1823 Monroe Doctrine, because Southern America was colonized by the Europeans. And now America took over. It is all those things that led to the world that we live today. That's what we want you to know. Because if you don't know where the rain starts to beat you, you wouldn't know where it starts. That is the genesis of the whole thing that we are suffering today. That's the colonial masters colonized, went and people in their lands and took over the control of their land, colonized so many places. And America passed a law that in 1823 called the Monroe Doctrine that gave them power over all these territories around that made them to call that area South America. That's what we wanted to know. And they have been in control of everything going on in that continent. That continent have not been free. They're not free. And so what we are saying here is that Trump went and kidnapped Nicolas Maduro. It's because of colonialism. It's because of neocolonialism, continuous exploitation of. And remember, now the companies, the companies from the colonial countries, remember the colonial countries now include America, Italy, Belgium, Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, to mention a few. Their companies are not being used. If you don't allow their companies to come in and exploit you, the country will come out. That is what transpired in Venezuela. As Trump was saying that they denied their country, their companies of opportunities. And the American was being denied of their share of the natural resources of Venezuela. And so we gave you the history of Venezuela, that it was colonized by Spain in 1502. And the indigenous people were resisting. The indigenous people were saying no. The indigenous people were led by the caciques, according to Wikipedia. And Venezuela was among other countries, Colombia, Panama, Ecuador, that formed part of Grand Colombia until 1830 when they got their independence. Venezuela got their independence in 1830. And since then, this type of flag independence. The colonial masters are still there, controlling them. And then in 1976, they neutralized their asset. But before then, in 1823, during the height of colonialism, America had what they call the Monroe Doctrine that prevented other Europeans from coming to American side. The side being managed being exploited by America. That is the Monroe Doctrine. And that is what Trump has brought back. Because in his last national security program, he said that America will now focus on the Monroe Doctrine. Trump went and brought back that Monroe Doctrine and said that they will now focus all their security in the southern hemisphere, which is all this area they've been controlling for many, many centuries. And they will not allow China, they will not allow Russia, they will not allow any other country to be visibly doing well in Venezuela, doing business in Venezuela. That's what Trump said. That's the program that Trump is pursuing. And so that is why Trump felt that he has the right to go into Venezuela and arrest an elected leader of Venezuela. That's what he's talking about. Because he's bringing back that Monroe Doctrine to say that they have power over all those areas of South America, which I have mentioned here for you. Peru, Brazil, Bolivia, Argentina, and Panama, Ecuador, all of them, Colombia, all of them are in that South America. It's a huge, vast land. It's a very big land area. It's a massive, just like the size of Africa. plus other lands across before, with Mexico and others. There's so many lands that they are controlling. That's what we need to know. They are in control of those things. And we want you to know that the trouble started when Venezuela nationalized her assets. Once you hear nationalization, the colonial masters doesn't like. They don't like nationalization. They want you to sell. They want you to sell your assets so they can come and buy it. Okay? So when Venezuela nationalized her assets from 1976, that is where the trouble started. And Venezuela before them had taken several steps. In August 1971, under the presidency of Rafael Herrera, a law was passed that nationalized the country's natural gas industry. Also in 1971, the law of reversion was passed, which stated that all the assets, plants, equipment belonging to concessionaries means they gave you something to run. At the end of the time that you agree with the government, that asset goes back to the government. That's what concessionaries means. You're giving concession to run something for so many years, for 5 years, for 10 years, for 20 years. At the end of that period, that concession ends and the access goes back to the country. These are the things that in the 1970s, that was what the problem. So what you see going on in Venezuela is where Venezuela. Venezuela has the highest oil deposit in the world, and America needs that oil. Just like they say that Saddam Hussein has weapon of mass destruction and went to Iraq. They went to Iraq for Iranian oil, and today they are in control of Iranian oil. The same thing with Libya. Libya has reasonable amount of oil, and they say that Muammar Gaddafi is this and that because Muammar Gaddafi was trying to set Africa economically free, have a currency backed by gold, which Africa is using, just like the BRICS are doing now. Only to Libya, they killed Gaddafi, and now the oil of Libya is in their hand. So the oil of Venezuela, America wants this in its hand. The major reason for the kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro. And we also want to let you know that even the former president before Nicolas Maduro, Hugo Chavez, who ruled from 1999 to 2013, also nearly suffered the same fate from the Americans. Because America didn't like it. He was a leftist government, and I have explained leftists and rightists. Leftists is that you have social programs for your people. Hugo Chavez was a leftist leader in Venezuela, and he was caring for the people, and people loved him. But America and other colonial masters wasn't like him, and he was killed. And Nicolas Maduro was his vice president. Maduro was his vice president. So he is continuing the legacy of Chavez. And you can see now why he got into trouble with America. So the insinuation that they are fighting for drugs, they are fighting for increasing demand of this and that is just public advertisement, for public to feel happy. It's not the truth. The truth is that America is there to tap natural resources of Venezuela, and one of the major natural resources is the oil, which is abundant. And we also use this lecture to explain to you the different types of sovereignty that no nation actually has sovereignty. If you are a creator, if your nation is created, just like the Western Europeans went to Berlin and carved out Africa to themselves, no African country has sovereignty. No African country has sovereignty. So for anybody telling you that Nigeria has sovereignty, no, you don't have sovereignty. Nigeria, for example, belong to Britain. They own Britain. They don't know everything going on in Nigeria. They are influencing everything going on in Nigeria. So where is your sovereignty? And we also tell you, if you are borrowing money, if you are buying arms from another country, you don't have sovereignty because the country you are buying arms from already know what you have. They know where it is. They can destroy it at any time. You don't have sovereignty. And if you are bringing terrorists, like in the case of Nigeria, you bring terrorists to cross your border and come in and be killing your people, you don't have sovereignty. You don't have sovereignty. So no African country has sovereignty. But this issue of sovereignty has been going on for so long. You know, and also we explain that there's what we call overt and covert sovereignty. When covert is hidden, when something is hidden, it is being done behind closed door, and the public doesn't know. It is called covert loss of sovereignty. In covert loss of sovereignty, it includes when you are borrowing money. If you say you are a country and you are borrowing money, you have lost your sovereignty. You are buying arms, those are covered loss of sovereignty. If you allow your richest 1%, the oligarchs, those that have a lot of money in your country, to be the one controlling your government, you have covert loss of responsibility, of sovereignty. And if you are practicing Western democracy where people loan you money for you to get into power, you have lost your sovereignty. Because those people that loan you money, that gave you money, donated money for you to win an election, to be in office, you'll be the one controlling you. So those are covert loss of sovereignty. Now, covert means open. The public knows it. Now, overt loss of sovereignty is like when you see demonstration, like in Iran now, you see demonstration going on. People are seeing demonstration going on. That is overt loss of sovereignty. Even though there's a hand behind it, but people are seeing that people are demonstrating in your country. Why should you be running a country and people are demonstrating? Why can't you be fair to your people? Why can't you provide the people what they need? And then when America interferes in Nigeria, comes and bombs the terrorists in Nigeria, that is overt loss of sovereignty. When America goes to Venezuela and kidnap a leader, that is overt loss of sovereignty. So there's no country except China and Russia, and also North Korea. I will add North Korea to that. North Korea has sovereignty. These are the things we want you to know. And we also want you to know that the United Nations is not important. Because if the UN is important, America cannot, by herself, single-handedly go into another country and perform this act. They can't do that. Even the building up where they are killing fishermen, bombing people, they can't do that. If the UN is truly a respectable, a functioning organization. These are the things we want you to know. And then finally, we want you to know that all these things going on is a result of the animal kingdom created after the Bull of the 15th century, 1455, 1444, 45, 55, when Pope Nicolas V gave authority to Portugal and other European countries to go into other countries to kill those who doesn't follow the Bible and Jesus. And they went to other countries. That resulted to this colonization, slavery, neocolonialism, and what we have today. That is what led to the world order we have today. That's why you see America the way it is. be owned by the Europeans. You see Canada be owned by the Europeans. You see New Zealand be owned by the Europeans. You see Australia be owned by the Europeans. You see Africa being divided amongst European countries. These are the things. Those are the things we want to know. And with this, we shall bring into this lecture. Please like, comment, and share, and also join. Touch the bell button to follow us so that anytime we do a new lecture, you will be the first to get it. Thank you very much for joining me, and have a good day. Thank you. Bye bye.